Welcome to the Baby Playbook podcast. It's so great to be in your company. Thank you so much for tuning in every week as we tackle all the different, elements of parenthood, motherhood, fatherhood, getting into the baby stage. That 0 to 6 month mark is really what we focus on as well, which is one of the tougher stages of having a baby, not just raising a baby, but also, the challenges that come with that and the changes to your life and your lifestyle. I'm excited about today's episode. We have the amazing Nicole Pedersen-McKinnon on. Now, I want to say that Nicole and I have worked together in, my other role as a journalist and as a newsreader. After I got onto maternity leave and I mentioned to her that I would be away for a little while, she was always on my wish list to have as a guest on my podcast, which is, of course, a passion project of mine, because Nicole is an absolute expert, a gun at everything to do with money. And she has a podcast herself. It's called Minted Kids, and it's designed to help parents teach their kids about money, which I absolutely love. And it's all about the insights and experiences of other kids as well. I know that you have kids on the podcast, which I love to hear as well. So today we're going to be talking a lot about finances and money with Nicole. We're going to be getting some great tips from her on budgeting, on time off work, on superannuation, on all the different things, and especially touching on, the pressure that we feel in terms of the finance department as a family once we start to have kids. Nicole, thank you so much for making the time.
That's so nice to be here, Nicolina. Thanks for having me.
We have so much to unpack today, and I know there's all different aspects of finances when it comes to babies, not just, buying, things for the baby, but there's also, as I mentioned, there's maternity leave, there's budgeting, there's extra purchases. And as your baby and your children grow up, there's different stages of this, right? Finances, some of those demands become higher. They become less, it just ebbs and flows throughout this period. And you are a mum yourself. I wanted to ask you, did you feel this pressure? Did you feel, this nervousness around money when it came to having kids?
Look, I did, but because I'm full finance nerd, basically, for me, it was a lot about the preparation. So I wanted to make sure that I felt, because it's kind of my thing, that I had my ducks in a row kind of before I had babies. So that was about paying down my mortgage, making sure I had a little bit of breathing space in that mortgage, even, making sure that there was a really nice emergency fund, or what I call a holy shit fund, so that, when things go wrong, I had that little bit of a buffer there. Having the accounts so that the big bills weren't going to come in and sort of derail us, and just getting that kind of everything sorted so that there wasn't going to be financial pressure on top of what I call the delicious delirium phase of that, like you said, 0 to 6 months, when everything's just a little bit cray cray and you just don't want money stuff to add to that.
100%. So preparation is really key, is what I'm hearing. And we will talk about that a lot, because I know you have an amazing book called How to Get Mortgage Free Like Me. And you're going to be providing us a discount code for that for our listeners, which I'll mention at the end of the podcast. So thank you so much for that. But we've got so much to unpack. Let's first start with, the pre-baby prep. Now, what I wanted to first talk about here is, I know a lot of the time, once you find out that you're having a baby, the more exciting part of it is, for example, like your baby shower and picking out things for the baby. And sometimes it can get a little bit overwhelming, because you start to think, oh my gosh, I need to buy, for example, some people think I need to buy a brand new cotton, a brand new pram, and there's that long list of things that you think you need to buy. Do you have any tips when it comes to budgeting, how we can kind of save in that area, that baby product department? Even, whether it be tips on what to ask for when people are asking you what to get you as a gift.
That's really interesting. And if you can get those things gifted to you, then that's the very best way, right? I mean, it gets a little difficult because you want the things that you want. You want the particular products that you want. And look, there's just amazing products out there now that make parenting so much easier, and, are really worthwhile spending the money on. For example, the cots that rock and swaddle and make the baby sleep, and, the things that, when my kids were little, even 13 years ago, weren't available. So some of those things are really, worth their weight in gold. So if you can get them gifted, that's amazing. Otherwise, Facebook Marketplace is your friend. So I just have a new baby niece. She's 2 weeks old. She is
Beautiful.
I know, I'm so excited. She is my second niece, and they're born 3 years apart. Now, my brother and his wife sourced everything on Facebook Marketplace, and then they sold everything back to Facebook Marketplace in between, and they just rebought it. And that allows you, rather than have all that clutter when it's a very cluttery kind of time anyway, and it can feel a bit kind of encroaching, to rebuy and maybe rebuy different things that might be, the product innovation has moved on, that is going to make your life just that little bit easier. And again, all Facebook Marketplace, all that secondhand, and steam cleaners from Bunnings, get it all sorted out so that you can actually reuse and recycle someone else's thing rather than paying that full baby premium price.
100%. And I think one time I read this, I don't even know where I read it, but somebody said, maybe I saw it on social media, and it was like, when it came to Facebook Marketplace or Gumtree or whatever it was, someone said, why would you pay for something full price when someone else has done it for you? And that has always stuck with me,
Exactly.
especially with those big ticket items,
And you're talking about things that might only be used for 3 months,
Yes.
like someone else has used it maybe for 3 months, and that's okay if you clean it, There's no point, like, if we're trying to save the environment as well as our economics, our personal economics, then it just makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it does. And I don't know if you did this as well, Nicole, but I in my friend group, it seemed to be, I was kind of one of the first to have a kid. So I was lucky enough to get a lot of hand-me-downs from my sister. And that's a big one, right? I think, we sometimes think, oh no, like I won't trouble someone, I won't ask the question, or no, I don't need the bag of clothes, you keep it, or whatever it is. Take, because my big thing is, if you can kind of take the hand-me-downs, whether it be, the daycare clothes, whatever it may be that you can use, or the capsule, as you said, you only use it for 3 to 4 months, especially if you have a chunky baby.
That's it. Forget the triple zeros or the
Yes,
quadruple zeros.
take it, and that's that premise of like having a village around you also means financially, helping with those things, that rather than me going out and spending $600 on a capsule, I'm going to borrow this. And then I think my capsule, one, my mum and dad, that was their big ticket purchase for our first baby, which was one of your
Yeah.
tips, of course. If
I mean,
somebody's offering to make that
yes.
big ticket item purchase, hand it over to them. That capsule has now been used by 3 or 4 of my friends. And what an
That's good.
amazing
Yeah.
sharing economy that has been.
That is the magic circle of saving. And I would say that, my clothes, the baby clothes that I had, were probably third hand. And then I passed them on to at least 2 more people. And they're in the garage ready to gift to the new baby. And that's been going for 13 years. And that's
Amazing.
actually often okay. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, all the time. The one thing I did want to ask you is, in this day and age where, the internet is an amazing place, as we're saying, you can, save a lot of money with the internet, whether it be marketplace, whether it be, finding different places to resell your items or buy secondhand items. On the other side, and I've very much experienced this, is there's a lot of product that's thrown in your face. And
Yes.
sometimes we can feel like, as parents, we need all the gadgets, or we need, what, like the sleep suit that's going to save our sanity, or whatever it may be. Do you have any tips on not being sucked into like that funnel of consistent,
Yeah.
product placement? Is there perhaps like a way of thinking? Could we go back to a budget and say, okay, where am I at with this? Do I really need it? That sort of thing.
Look, I think you've just touched on it there. It's, do you really need it? Like, is this fundamental to the baby's kind of survival and your comfort? Like, I'm all for forking out for things that are going to make everybody's lives easier and better, because comfort is the thing for a baby, right? Which ultimately flows straight through to the parents. But if it's like extraneous things, products, extra this, extra that, then you probably don't need it at all. And let's face it, a baby may not even notice. So be really careful about that, because you're a massive target of marketing when you get on the radar of having a baby. There's that very famous kind of digital marketing targeting example where someone who had newly found out they were pregnant got on, I think it was Target's in the US's kind of baby market targeting, which alerted her parents that she was pregnant.
Wow.
That's how insidious this kind of like deep, they call them dark patterns in marketing, are at targeting you and putting things in your face that you think you need, or you probably don't need it all.
Yeah. And you are obviously in a really like emotionally heightened stage as well, and that can
You
impact your
want
decision making,
you
right?
want to do the best for your baby, and particularly if you're a first-time parent, you think that
Mm,
all these things are necessary, and they are probably not. I mean, chances are you might be better off taking that step back and actually focusing on your overarching finances to make sure that they are going to be sound, and therefore your family life is going to be as smooth as possible for you to focus on your baby.
yeah. Well, let's talk about that, because I think, as much as we can prep while we're pregnant, buy all the right items, we can, be ready to go when it comes to swaddles and bassinets and
Mhm.
clothes and the nursery's all done up. One thing we can forget about is our finances, because we're so, I guess, immersed in naturally the excitement of a baby, how it's going to be. We're nervous about the birth. There's a lot of things on our mind. But one
Yeah.
thing, of course, you help families with is that finance side. Being able to be comfortable during this time and take off something like off your plate, off your shoulders, that pressure, really beneficial.
Makes the world of difference. And like I would say at first, while you're thinking about maybe taking folate, way back then, you should be thinking about your health insurance if you have it and if you want it. Now, don't miss that if you're a family on $202,000 or an individual on $101,000, you're going to pay for hospital cover anyway. Okay, so you may as well get it because you're going to be paying that penalty in the terms of the tax Medicare levy surcharge at the end of every year. So if you want your private health insurance, you need to get that activated. It varies by fund. Sometimes it's 1 year before the birth. Sometimes it's 1 year before pregnancy. So just look that up and make sure about that. The other thing that I would say in the preparation that's really vital that you need to do first is just think about, if you have one, your mortgage, because once your income drops down to perhaps half, right,
Mm,
depending on what you decide to do, you are very unlikely to get a refinance. So, and this is a big part of, what my book teaches people to do is how to get that refinance that's going to save you the maximum amount of money, because you want that mortgage that's going to be the best mortgage for you on
mm.
the lowest interest rate, and you want to qualify for it while your income is up here. The bank doesn't need to know you're pregnant. That's something to keep on the absolute down low, because it is going to hurt you in terms of making that very smart money move with your home loan. So get onto that one as well.
Yeah, amazing. And that's the thing. These are the things that kind of drop to the side a little bit when you become pregnant, because one of the things we do tend to more think about, which we do need to, is of course, who's taking time off work.
Yeah.
How does that impact our salary? How long do we take? There's a lot of questions about staying at home with the baby and who's going to do it and how it's financially sound. Where I want to start this conversation with you is more, do you have any tips on speaking to your partner about money? Because something I have realized a little bit with friends around me is, before you have children, obviously it's a really fun time. You're probably just like, you're married, it's just the two of you, you have an amazing social life. Finances and like the boring adult stuff, like it's there, but
Yeah.
it's not there to the extreme that it becomes once you have kids and you really need to, be serious about it. How do we feel comfortable having these conversations? How do we open these up? Are they really important to have with your partner prior to even potentially like the conversation of, when are we thinking about having kids? It might just be, hey, how do the next 5 to 10 years look like for us financially as a family, and how does that progress?
This is a really important part of compatibility overall. And a lot of people don't pay a lot of attention to it because you're focusing on a whole bunch of other things when you're choosing that partner. You've got your brain overriding
Yeah.
sense sometimes as well. So
Yeah.
I always say that, you need to find not just your funny match, but your money match. And hopefully you have managed to do that well before getting pregnant, because that's the critical moment where that's the acid test moment to it, right? So the other thing you need to do is be aligned on your goals. So what is it that you want to achieve? Where do you want to go? What do you value in terms of your money? And plugging right into that is, of course, your spending proclivity. How willing are you to forgo kind of the frittering and that instant gratification of for the bigger things in life that you want, and for those bills that are going to come in, and how are you going to cope with, the income dropping, because that's probably the reality of the situation, while the bills stay the same during this sort of baby phase.
And it's even those small things, isn't it, Nicole? Like I remember, I said to my husband the other day, I said, "Oh man, I wish I miss." I used to just go to work and grab a coffee every day, and I wouldn't even think about it.
Mhm.
Obviously, now coffees are like $6.50. It's insane. But
Yeah,
back 5 years ago, before I had my first, and now when I go to buy a coffee, it's like this innate thought in my head of like, oh, do I buy this coffee, or I could buy the kids this, or I could put this
yeah.
towards our, budgeting or our next family holiday. You're changing the way you think changes with
Yeah,
having
and that
kids
is
and with
and
having a family.
that is a real rewiring where,
Mm,
and I'm sure that's a parenting, mothering instinct that kicks in, where you go, actually, I've got to provide for somebody else now. So, it's that whole put on everyone else's sunscreen and then forget your own, and
yeah,
that's
yeah.
kicks in financially as well. Look, I think it's very important as parents that you do keep your non-negotiable spending that makes you happy, and maybe it is that coffee each day. Do you know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
maybe it's investing in a coffee machine, because actually the cost of use of that is going to make it better. But the chances are you might need the ritual and also the outing of taking your baby in the pram to get that coffee. Like, that's maybe part of the whole structure of your day. But on other things, you might need to pull back a little bit. And
Mm.
that's kind of the balance during this phase. It doesn't last forever. That's the thing. It doesn't have to be extreme. It doesn't last forever, but you do probably need to find that balance of what works for your family financially.
So then, Nicole, what sort of questions should we be having in this discussion with our partner when it comes to planning our time off? You mentioned there's those big questions like, what's the mortgage looking like? What's our repayments? But what are the questions that we should be having, and how can we kind of get a little bit of a step up before we have that time off? Is it perhaps some buffer money? Is it perhaps a budgeting strategy? What does it look like?
I think it's both of those things, and the budgeting strategy allows you to, generate the buffer. So I call this the holy shit fund, right? In case things go wrong, because shit is going to go wrong at a certain point, and you need to have that money behind you, because otherwise it's going to potentially see you reaching for credit cards and going deeper into debt, and that's when things get really, really stressful. So I think it's a matter of having upfront, that discussion about, yes, we're going to refinance, very possibly. We need to get a cheaper loan. We need to maybe get that spread over a longer period of time. So maybe if you're like 20 years into your loan, maybe then you refinance and you get a 30-year loan, because that is going to dramatically cut the money that you have to come up with for your house or your housing every month. And then you need that buffer. And that buffer is going to also help you bill smooth. So those annual bills that come in, for example, maybe you pay your home and contents insurance annually. You don't want to have that possibly $4,000, $5,000 bill hit when you're on maternity leave and go, oh, that timing was awful. So what you need to be doing is reserving from every pay, in the lead up as much as you can, just with the sole kind of goal of building that war chest together. So that's the discussion, is just generating as much money as you can to make sure that you're sweet and you're going to be tided over to get you through the maternity paternity leave period.
Definitely. The other thing here, Nicole, and we spoke about a little bit about it with social media before, I was going to say, is I very much, especially with Noah, felt that pressure. And it's, I think, a new age thing, and it's a social media thing of like, I would see people, jetting off to Europe with their 6-month-old baby. And I was like, how, like, what? I was like, we are like, we've got our bills, we've got this. I've been buying
Is that a good
formula.
idea? Like, how
Yeah.
fun is
Are
that
you
holiday going to be? Is it going to be worth the amount you pay for it?
right? But I guess my question here, and you must have felt it as well, is I think sometimes we see these like, and good on them, whatever you can achieve. But sometimes I think we need to remind ourselves, as you said, that it is a season, and it might just be a
Yeah.
really tight season, and things will get better, and money will free up, and how do we, I guess, stop comparing ourselves to people and really just stay on our own track and in our own lane during this time?
Oh, look, this is the $64,000 question with the modern world right now, Nicolina, right? But I think like this period of time in particular, it's a beautiful time to just focus on you and your home and the relationships within your home and nurturing the children in your home. So I think, rather than turning outward, I think it's about looking inward a little bit more and also valuing the people and the pastimes that mean a lot to you. So I think, switch off if you can.
Yeah.
You can mute those people who are going around Europe. They don't know. It's not unkind. When they're back, in the drudgery of life, then you can, check out what they're doing again. But I just think for your own mental health, it's a season, it's a time. You don't need to be going to Europe with a 6-month-old. You just don't.
Yeah, you really don't. You really don't. It's not fun. I can only imagine that plane ride. That made me feel better. I was like, think about the nightmare of a plane ride.
We cancelled ours for 5 years because my mini man was not going to sit in a chair like for any time, let alone close to 24 hours.
No. And that's the thing as well, even with family holidays, is like adjusting. It's okay to take the trip to Queensland for now because, you have more of a budget. It's much easier to achieve. Rather than think, big ticket during this time and big experiences. Those will come later.
Look, we know as parents that it can be just as fun to like go to the park around the corner,
100%,
hang out with a picnic, than try and get on a long haul flight. It's possibly a lot more fun and free.
100%. Hello. Well, Nicole and I, as you can hear, had such a great time chatting all things finance and babies. I have actually cut our episode into 2 because we are running a little bit long now. So make sure you tune in when this drops next. It's going to be part 2 of my chat with Nicole, talking all things money, talking all things baby, talking all things finances, where we touch on all things superannuation as well and planning as much as we can to get nice and comfortable. Hey, thank you so much for joining me on the Baby Playbook podcast. I will see you then. Make sure if you have a moment, by the way, leave a rating, leave a review, leave a star because I much appreciate it.